She said she was sick. But that night I caught her with my worst enemy, at the place where I proposed. That's when I knew our story was over and mine was just beginning. I walked up to their table, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. When Rachel looked up and saw me standing there, her jaw dropped open. It was like she'd seen a ghost. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen her look less like the woman I married. That open-mouthed stare, frozen in disbelief, it was just pitiful. Tyler started to rise from his seat, maybe thinking he could smooth things over, but I quickly raised my hand. "Don't get up, Tyler," I said, calm but firm. "As long as you stay sitting, we won't have a problem. But if you stand up, I swear I'll knock your teeth so far down your throat you'll be flossing with your shoelaces. So let's keep this civil, for your sake." I looked back at Rachel. My voice shook a little, but I pushed through. "I'm sorry to crash your little evening, but I couldn't let this go without saying something. I mean, faking being sick just so you could ditch me for the weekend and sneak off with him? Really, Rachel?" I turned my gaze briefly to Tyler, then back to her. "You know, there isn't a person alive I despise more than this guy. But it's not even just him, it's where you brought him. Here. Of all places." My voice cracked a bit then. "This was our spot, Rachel. This is where we first met. This is where I asked you to marry me. We shared so many memories here, ones I thought meant something to you too. But now you've poisoned that for me. This place doesn't feel special anymore. And honestly, neither do you." I took a deep breath and looked her dead in the eyes. "On our wedding day, you looked me in the face and promised you'd never hurt me. That you'd never do anything to make me stop loving you. But here we are. 2 broken promises in one night. Because I am hurt more than I can put into words. And the love I had for you? It's melting away faster than an ice cube in hot coffee." I let the silence hang there, heavy. You know how I am, Rachel. I've always tried to make sense of things. I look at the problem, figure out what's wrong, and fix it. So here's what I see. You're out here with Tyler, sneaking around. That tells me you want to be with other men. The problem is you're married to me. And that makes me the problem." I shook my head slowly. "So I'm removing myself. Problem solved. You're free now," I said. "Date whoever you want. I just hope he's worth it." I turned to walk away but paused, glancing back over my shoulder. "Tyler, this isn't finished between us. I'll be seeing you." With that, I walked out of the restaurant and onto the street, heart thudding against my ribs. I crossed Michigan Avenue, ducked around the corner, and stopped just outside the entrance to the Drake Hotel. I needed a second to breathe. Not long after, I saw Rachel rush out of the restaurant, scanning the sidewalk, eyes darting everywhere like she was hoping to catch sight of me. But she didn't. Her shoulders sagged as reality hit her. Then she crossed the street, flagged down a cab, and headed north, back toward the condo. I was torn up inside. But a small, bitter part of me found comfort in knowing I'd ruined their little romantic evening. And maybe, just maybe, she cared enough to try and find me. But she wouldn't. A few minutes later, Tyler came out too. He looked around, didn't see me, hailed his own cab, and disappeared into the night in the opposite direction. I stayed there, tucked behind the hotel entrance, thinking about everything that just happened. And I knew I wasn't ready to go home. Not yet. I decided to stay at the Drake for a few days, just to breathe. I wasn't really sure what to do next with my life, so I walked into the Drake and booked a room. I figured I needed space, time to think. Now, you're probably wondering how it all got to this point. So let me rewind the clock a little and fill you in. My name's John Burton. And the woman I once proudly called my wife, her name is Rachel. After I graduated from MIT, I landed a job as a software engineer at a firm in Chicago called Grace Systems Solutions. It was a solid company and I was lucky to get in when I did. The owner, Greg Grace, ran a tight ship but treated his people well. Over time, I moved up the ladder pretty quickly and started building a solid career for myself. It was during my second year there, at the company's annual holiday party, when Greg introduced me to someone who would change the course of my life. He brought along his goddaughter Rachel. She was the daughter of his best friend, and honestly I think Greg was trying to play matchmaker that night. If that was his plan, he nailed it. I don't know if you believe in love at first sight, but I do, because that night, it hit me like a freight train. Rachel was stunning. But more than that, she was clever, quick-witted, and had this magnetic energy that just pulled you in. Within minutes I was hooked. I think she felt it too. The chemistry between us was immediate, undeniable. It was like something clicked into place. That party was at a restaurant called Spaga. And from that night on, it became our place. Our go-to spot for special nights, for celebrations, for just because dinners. It became the backdrop to so many memories that, for a long time, were some of the happiest in my life. Just 3 months after that first night, I took her back to Spaga on a Saturday evening. I'd planned it all out. After dinner, I asked her to marry me right there at our table. She didn't hesitate, she leapt into my arms, said yes, and the whole restaurant erupted in applause. It was one of those moments that burns itself into your heart forever. We got married in 2010. And for years, everything just seemed to fall into place. My career took off, hers did too. We were doing well, building a beautiful life together. Whenever we hit a milestone or had something to celebrate, we'd end up back at Spaga, raising a glass to whatever came next. But then, around 6 months ago, I started to feel off. Something had shifted. Nothing obvious, just a slow, quiet change in the air between us. The sparkle we used to have started to fade. The romance, the connection, it wasn't gone, but it felt like it was slipping away. Now, I wasn't accusing her of anything. I didn't have evidence. It was more of a gut feeling, that subtle kind of drift you notice when you've been with someone long enough to sense when they're pulling away. And I didn't want to just sit around and watch it happen. So, I decided to do something about it. I came up with an idea for a surprise trip. Something to shake us out of our routine and maybe get back to what we used to be. One of my best friends from college, Adam Hartley, worked with his dad, Ben, in the software world. Their company actually worked with Greg's, so I had plenty of reasons to travel to their offices in Cleveland. So I planned the trip around one of those visits. Rachel and I would head out to Cleveland together for a Friday night dinner with Adam and Ben and their wives, Carolyn and Gloria. Saturday morning, I had a brief business meeting scheduled, but right after that, it was just going to be the two of us. We'd take the car and head up to Niagara Falls for a quiet, romantic weekend. Just us. A chance to hit pause on everything else and remember who we were. The plan was to come back to Chicago Monday night, refreshed and hopefully reconnected. That was the hope anyway. That morning started off with a strange heaviness. Around 2 or 3 in the morning, Rachel got out of bed quietly. I barely noticed until I rolled over and saw the sheets beside me were empty. A few minutes later, she whispered from the hallway that she wasn't feeling well and didn't want to wake me. She said she must have caught something, stomach bug or maybe the flu, and just needed to sleep it off. She asked me to call her office and let them know she wouldn't be in that day. I said of course, and I let her rest while I got ready for work. At around 10 a.m., I gave her a quick call from the office just to check in and see how she was holding up. Her voice was groggy and weak. She said she still felt awful and was just trying to sleep through it. I told her, well, I guess I'll be going to Cleveland alone then. She didn't really respond, just silence on the other end. I figured she was too out of it to talk and hung up. I was in the middle of setting up for my big presentation with Adam and Ben anyway. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I was so focused on work I barely noticed the time until around 5:30 p.m., just before heading out the door. I tried calling Rachel again. This time it rang a few times and went straight to voicemail. I left her a message telling her what the plans were, and then hopped into a cab to head to Spaga for dinner with Adam and his folks. We were seated at our table, sipping on cocktails when I saw Adam's expression shift. His eyes widened slightly, and his mouth tightened like he was trying to figure out how to break some news he didn't want to say out loud. He leaned in and said softly, "John? I hate to be the one to say this, but Rachel just walked in." My stomach dropped. For a second I couldn't even turn around. But I didn't need to. The look on everyone's faces at the table told me everything. Sympathy. Pity. I felt like the floor had opened up underneath me. Eventually I turned to see her, dressed nicely, hair done, looking anything but sick, and walking in with him. With Tyler. I stood up slowly, fighting back the wave of emotions crawling up my chest. "Well," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "that's something, isn't it?" I looked around the table. I'm not going to pretend I didn't see what we all just saw. I think it's best if I excuse myself for the night. Please go ahead and enjoy your dinner. Let's regroup tomorrow. How about breakfast at the hotel, 9:30? Hopefully by then I'll be able to speak in complete sentences. They all nodded, silently agreeing it was best. As I stepped away from the table, I turned back one last time and said, "It's clear that Rachel and we've reached a turning point. There are going to be some changes in my life. I just don't know yet what those look like." Then I looked at Adam and Ben. "One thing I do want to ask, don't sign that new contract Greg sent over. Not yet. Just give me a little time to figure things out, both with my job and my marriage. You know Greg's been close with Rachel's family for years. He's her father's best friend. Her godfather, even. If you can hold off, I think there might be a better deal in this for you down the road. But if you can't wait, I get it. No hard feelings." We all said our quiet goodbyes and they headed off into the night. I thought briefly about heading to the office to get a jump on things, maybe clear my head. But something told me Greg might be there, maybe even Rachel, thinking I'd show up. I wasn't ready to see either of them. So I held off and spent the rest of the day holed up in my hotel room, flipping pages of a book I barely absorbed. Sunday morning I went in early. The office was empty, the silence thick. I spent a few hours getting everything in order, mentally preparing for what Monday might bring. I knew I had to be ready for anything. Later that day my old mentor Roger gave me a call. We talked briefly about what was going on and he mentioned another contact, Jacob Easterman, who might be a good person to talk to if things didn't work out. I thanked him but told him flatly, no way. I'm not looking to fix things with Rachel. That door's closed. The truth was I didn't love her anymore. That realization had been building for a while, but it fully sank in the moment I walked out of the office that day. The damage was done, and this wasn't something I could talk or reason my way through. It was time to take the next step. I met with Jacob, my attorney, on Monday morning. He was efficient and direct, which I appreciated. He told me he could have the divorce paperwork finalized and ready to file by Tuesday afternoon. Rachel would be served first thing Wednesday morning. After that, I headed to the bank. Our finances had always been kept mostly separate, by mutual agreement. We both had our own 401 Burmese chats, our own savings and investment accounts. The only overlap was a shared checking account, and even then, we only really knew what the other deposited into it each month. I requested a cashier's check for half the value of my liquid assets and took it across town to open new accounts in my own name at a different bank. I put $25,000 in checking and another $125,000 into a new savings account. Clean slate. The rest of the day was spent handling loose ends, insurance policies, updating beneficiaries, setting up automatic bill payments. All the little things that don't seem important until they suddenly matter. With all that squared away, I figured it was time to finally return to the office. I expected awkwardness. What I didn't expect was Greg pulling me into a closed-door meeting. His tone was sharp, calculated. John, he said, you've always been one of the most dependable guys on the team. You helped write our company policies and you've followed them better than anyone. I nodded, unsure where this was going. Then he said, but Rachel is my goddaughter. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't find a way to fix things with her, I'll have no choice but to let you go. I just looked at him. My phone had been recording the entire conversation, tucked discreetly in my pocket. I figured there was a chance he'd try something like this and I wasn't about to be blindsided. Greg thought he could strong-arm me. But what he didn't realize was that I'd already made my peace. I was done. Done with the marriage, done with pretending, done with being leveraged because of someone else's guilt. Back at my desk, I gathered the personal things that mattered. A few books, some files, a desk clock. Then I noticed a framed photo of me and Rachel from our wedding day, still sitting on the shelf. I stared at it for a long time. Eventually, I pulled the picture from the frame, dropped it in the trash, and placed the frame carefully into my box. When I turned around, Rachel was standing there. She must have seen what I did. Her face was pale and tears streamed down her cheeks. For a moment, it looked like she was going to collapse. Her voice came out quiet and trembling. Johnny, can we talk? I paused at the door. There's nothing left to talk about. And then I walked away. For the past 2 years, Greg hadn't allowed me to do any programming at work. Instead, he had me stuck handling systems maintenance and managing client accounts. But what he didn't know was that I'd been writing my own code on the side, refining a project I believed could outperform the software we were currently using. I'd almost completed it and originally I'd planned to pitch it to Greg. But now, I'd be free to market it on my own. That night, I had dinner with Adam, and he told me he'd talked to his father Ben about potentially backing the project. It wasn't a promise, but it was something. A new beginning, maybe. Rachel kept reaching out in the days that followed. Calls, texts, emails. She even showed up outside the apartment a couple of times, saying she missed me, that she had made a mistake, that she didn't want to lose me. I didn't answer. I was done. Eventually, I called Jacob again and told him to contact her attorney. I made it clear, if Rachel didn't stop contacting me, I'd be filing for a restraining order. That was the last straw. A few days after I shut things down completely, I got one last message from Rachel. Read. Johnny, I love you. With everything in me, I want to stop all this and spend the rest of my life making things right. I can't believe you'd consider a restraining order against me, but if that's what you need to feel safe, then do it. This will be the last time I reach out. I stared at the message for a long time, and I felt nothing. Maybe a flicker of sadness, but no warmth. No ache. Just a kind of quiet finality. That silence didn't last long, though. Soon enough, we were back in the courtroom. The bailiff called the room to order. All rise. We stood. Judge Caldwell entered with a slow, steady presence. She took her seat and greeted us before glancing over at me. Mr. Burton, she said, her voice calm but deliberate, as the petitioner in this divorce case, I am required to ask, would you be willing to withdraw this action and return home to attempt reconciliation? I didn't hesitate. No, Your Honor. I'd like to proceed with the divorce. I saw the flicker of disapproval in her expression, tight lips, a slight narrowing of her eyes, but she simply nodded. Very well. Then she turned to Rachel. Mrs. Burton, are you in agreement with the divorce? Rachel's voice cracked as she answered. No, Your Honor. I still want to work things out. That was all Judge Caldwell needed. In that case, I am ordering 6 mandatory counseling sessions. 2 joint sessions initially, followed by 3 individual sessions for each party, and 2 additional joint sessions thereafter. The only exception to this requirement will be if the counselor formally informs the court that reconciliation is not possible. And with that, she struck her gavel. Next case. The sound echoed in the room like a shot. I wanted to object, wanted to tell the judge this was a waste of time, but Jacob leaned in and placed a firm hand on my arm. John, he whispered, just go to the first session. If nothing changes, tell the counselor you're done. Make it clear. That's all. I gave a short nod and left the courtroom feeling more exhausted than angry. Not defeated, just tired of fighting for something that no longer had any life in it. Later, during one of my individual sessions, I tried explaining it in terms the therapist might understand. It was love at first sight, I told him. It didn't take time. It didn't grow slowly. It hit me instantly, hard. And if you can fall in love that fast, isn't it possible you can fall out of love just as quickly? He didn't say anything, just jotted something down in his notepad. I kept going. Rachel showed up at a restaurant, our place actually, with a man I couldn't stomach. My worst enemy. She says nothing happened between them, and maybe that's true. But it doesn't matter. My heart split open right then and there. I looked him in the eye. I walked in with love still clinging on barely, but by the time I got to their table, half of it had leaked out. And when I walked out the door, it was gone. All of it. I haven't felt love for her since that night. The therapist didn't push me. But Rachel? She cried openly during the joint session. Sobbing. Pleading. I just don't understand, she kept saying. How can you stop loving someone that fast? And I wanted to yell, how can someone be so blind? 2 days later, I got an official letter from the court with 3 dates listed for my required individual sessions. When the first session came around, I didn't go. I knew what I wanted. I'd made it clear. But skipping that appointment came with consequences. I was summoned back to court, stood in front of Judge Caldwell again, and was promptly held in contempt. She fined me $500 on the spot and told me in no uncertain terms that if I missed my next scheduled session, the punishment would be more than just financial. I was done with the marriage. But apparently the court wasn't done with me. The judge warned me that if I missed another counseling session, I'd be jailed. And I looked her square in the eye and said, then you'll have to jail me, Your Honor. Because I'm not going to something that feels like punishment for wanting out of a broken marriage. It wasn't defiance. It was just the truth. I wasn't angry. In fact, for the first time in a long while, I felt calm, steady, like I was finally doing what was right for me. Later that day, I had a meeting with Greg. Despite everything, we sat down like old friends. Before Rachel blew my life sideways, Greg had always treated me fairly. We had history, respect. So when he asked me to at least consider returning to Gray Systems Solutions, I gave him my word, I'd think about it. The judge had rescheduled my individual session for the next day. After my court appearance, I was escorted back home by a uniformed officer. He stood quietly in my living room while I took a shower, shaved, and got dressed for my appointment. Then he drove me over and waited until I walked into the counseling office. Later that afternoon, I sat down with Greg again. This time I was ready to speak clearly. Greg, I said, you've been a good friend to me, and I appreciate that. But I have to do what's best for me now. He nodded, waiting. You remember when I got my last promotion? You told me I was too valuable to waste time writing code. That I needed to manage systems and handle client relations. And I did it. But Greg, I love programming. That's what I was born to do. I could see him start to catch on. I've been working on something new, a security platform. It's 4 generations ahead of anything your company is currently offering. And because I did it entirely on my own time with no ties to the company, there's no non-compete clause stopping me from taking it to market. Greg leaned back in his chair, his mouth curling into a sly smile. Let's not get contentious, John. I want you back. But let's not pretend I couldn't have come up with some work-related reason to fire you if I'd needed one. I actually laughed. Couldn't help it. That wiped the smirk right off his face. I leaned forward. Greg, I recorded our entire conversation the day you fired me. I asked you twice if there were any performance-related issues and you said no. Crystal clear. So if this goes legal, I'm not the one who's going to lose sleep. His posture shifted. That's when I laid it out for him. I'm willing to let you market the platform, this one and anything else I build after it. But the ownership of every program I write from here on out stays with me. In return, you get an exclusive license to sell them, with a fixed royalty percentage paid directly to me. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. You've got guts, he said. But if your code is what you say it is, we're going to make a killing. We shook hands. A few days later, back in court, things got heated, fast. Rachel stood up and, in a panicked voice, practically begged Judge Caldwell. Please, Your Honor, I'm asking you to grant his request for divorce. Just, don't send him to jail again. It was desperate. Pleading. Her voice cracked. I think she even spit a little, she was so worked up. But Judge Caldwell was unmoved. It's too late for that, honey. He's going to serve his time. Period. That's when I snapped. I stood up and shouted, Your Honor, I'd like to approach the bench. She turned on me like a lightning bolt. You are not allowed to address me directly. That's why you have an attorney. I turned to Jacob, who'd been quiet this whole time. You know what, Jacob? You're fired. I looked the judge in the eye. I'll be representing myself from this point forward. She glared at me like I'd personally offended her, but I didn't care. I have reason to believe there's been judicial impropriety in how this case has been handled. And I'm going to make sure that gets looked into. The courtroom fell into silence. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I was just done being everyone's doormat. It's not like I wanted to destroy Rachel's world. That's never what this was about. I didn't want her hurt. I didn't want her family hurt. And I definitely didn't want to be the reason her parents' marriage fell apart. I didn't love her anymore, that part was true. But despite everything, I didn't want her to lose everything. But there was one thing I couldn't ignore any longer. I had evidence, undeniable proof, that Judge Caldwell had been having an affair with Rachel's father. I hadn't wanted to use it. I'd kept that card in my back pocket, hoping I'd never need to play it. But when it became clear that this divorce was turning into something it shouldn't, I knew I had to say something. That morning, before the session resumed, I asked to speak privately with the judge. I don't want to hurt anyone, I told her. Not Rachel. Not her parents. And not you. But I have clear evidence of your relationship with her father. You shouldn't be presiding over this case. She didn't deny it. She didn't argue. She just looked at me, long and hard, and said, Mr. Burton, my only request is this. Before I sign anything, please sit down with Rachel. Let her talk to you. I know you told the counselor that your heart was broken, and I believe that. But hers is too. Just give her a few minutes of your time. That's all I ask. I nodded. Fine. But this stays between us. And if you grant the divorce after, none of this ever leaves this room. She agreed. When we returned to the courtroom later that day, she granted the divorce. Rachel stood there, tears in her eyes, still telling me she loved me. Still begging me to forgive her. And I did. I told her, Rachel, I do forgive you. And no, I don't hate you. But I don't love you anymore either. Then I pulled her into one last hug. I could feel her shaking in my arms. But I didn't stay. I turned and walked out of the courtroom, her sobs echoing softly behind me as I stepped down the hallway and into whatever came next. The next 6 weeks were a blur. I threw myself into the new security program I'd been building. It felt good to be creating something again, to be working on something I believed in. I was just days away from rolling out the live system for Adam and Ben. Then, about a week before I was supposed to fly out to Cleveland, my phone rang. It was Rachel. Johnny, she said, her voice quieter than I remembered, I've decided to sell the condo. I've already got an offer, $560,000. I didn't say much. Just wished her well. It wasn't my business anymore. The day of the implementation came. I flew out, checked into my hotel, and headed over to Adam's offices. He met me at the door with a big grin and pulled me into a hug. We're excited to get this running, he said. Everyone's pumped. We're lucky to have you. Then he added, there's someone I want you to meet. And that's when I saw her. Rachel. Standing right there in the IT department. I froze. Adam smiled. She's our new IT administrator. I'm sure you know how talented she is. I figured you two would work well together on the integration. I looked at him, stunned. Is this some kind of setup? He shook his head. No tricks, John. Just business. You'll be okay. Maybe he believed that. Maybe he didn't. Later that night, I sat alone in my hotel room and couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled back in. So I did something bold. Maybe foolish. I logged into the company system. Most programmers leave a backdoor in the systems they build. Not for malicious reasons, just in case something needs a tweak later. And I used mine. I found Rachel's address in the personnel file. I went out and bought a bottle of her favorite wine, Cabernet from a little vineyard she used to love. Then I drove to her apartment. The doorman asked who I was there to see. I told him, Rachel. He looked unsure but buzzed up anyway. When she opened the door, her eyes widened. Johnny? She stepped toward me then stopped. Please don't go. Please, not again. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked away. That night I sent her an email. Short. Honest. Subject, about today. Rachel. When I walked into Adam's office, I wasn't expecting to see you. I should have known though. It didn't take long to figure it out. Quitting your job, selling the condo, moving to Cleveland, and taking that position with Adam and Ben. I get it now. You came here to be close to me. But Rachel, being near me doesn't change anything. You had my heart once. But it's not yours anymore. John. Maybe it's arrogant of me, but I figured you took that job in Cleveland to be close to me. Maybe, in some small corner of your mind, you thought if we were working in the same building, walking the same halls, you could wear me down. Maybe you believed we could fall back into something familiar, even while you kept your options open. Maybe you thought you could be close to me and still date other men. But whatever your reasons, it doesn't matter anymore, because I'm out of the equation. I'll admit, for a little while, I second-guessed myself. Even after the divorce was finalized, I caught myself wondering if maybe I acted too fast. If I should have tried harder. If what we had could have been salvaged. But your actions have made it crystal clear. I didn't make a mistake. In fact, the only mistake I almost made was believing you might still care about me. That you could still feel something real. But you don't. You care about yourself. And that's fine. I hope one day you find whatever it is that makes you feel whole, whatever fills that space inside you that made you reach for everything but what you already had. As for me, I'm closing this chapter for good. The only thing I have left to say is strictly business. The passwords and access credentials for the users on the system are documented in the implementation instructions. If any issues come up in the future, call Greg. He'll connect you with the rest of the team that supported me during development. Because I won't be working there anymore. Good luck with everything, Rachel. And just so you know, sometimes, after a man divorces a woman who betrayed him, he ends up with someone younger, kinder, more intelligent. Someone who makes him laugh again. Who wants him body and soul. Who's passionate, loyal, and never once makes him feel like he's not enough. Sometimes, after heartbreak, you get to love again, the right way. And maybe this time it lasts.